Welcome to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Rey Descalso from Privada Wealth Management. In this podcast, we help you overcome financial worries and make sense of planning, investing, insurance, and banking. Join us for this journey as Rey draws from his expertise and interviews brilliant minds to help you enjoy life. The best is yet to come.
Hello and welcome to Return on Lifestyle with Rey Descalso from Privada Wealth Management. Today, Rey has brought in a special guest, and I'm going to let him take the reins over here and introduce his guest. Good morning, Rey. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking, sir.
Yeah, and you brought in a special guest, and I know it's Geoff, but I'm going to let you do the intro.
Fantastic. Yes, I'm very delighted to have attorney Geoff Hoatson here with me today. He is the founder, CEO, and the brains behind, well, maybe not the brains, the good looks behind Family First Firm here in beautiful Central Florida. Geoff, welcome to Return on Lifestyle. Geoff, what kind of law do you practice and why?
Okay, so I'm an elder law attorney. And by the way, thanks for having me, Rey.
You.
A lot of people don't necessarily understand what elder law is. So, people always think, okay, well, wills, trusts, that's elder law. And definitely a component, but that's certainly not what makes it elder law. There are estate planning lawyers who focus on that stuff. What makes us elder law attorneys is we work with a lot of benefit planning. So I do a lot of Medicaid qualification work, getting people who are not eligible for Medicaid, getting them qualified by restructuring their assets or income. I'm VA accredited, as are my attorneys that work for me. And so we do a lot of veterans benefits qualifications as well. There's some great VA benefits out there that can be up to about $26,000 a year to help people pay for in-home care, assisted living care, those types of things. And then lastly, we do a lot of guardianship. Now, it's not really benefit work, but, oftentimes people get to the point where they age and they develop dementia, Alzheimer's, they lose capacity, maybe have a stroke, God forbid. And if they don't have advanced directives in place, their loved ones have to get guardianship in order to take care of them. So, those three areas are really what make us an elder law firm. And those three areas take up probably about 60 to 70% of the work that we do.
Fantastic. And that's what you do. Tell me a little bit about why you do it. What do you find that's rewarding about it? What do you enjoy the most about?
So the reason I ended up doing this, when people look at me, they always say, why are you an elder law attorney? You're too young. I'm in my mid-30s, and they're like, it doesn't make sense. But both of my parents have needed either VA benefits or Medicaid during their lifetime, both sets, actually. In fact, I only have one living grandparent, and she is currently receiving veterans benefits from her deceased husband, my grandfather. And, it's paying for her to be in a group home because she didn't have a lot of resources. And so, her Social Security with that VA benefit is paying the whole cost of the care there. So, these benefits have been incredibly instrumental in my family's lives. And it made me realize that I want to help other people with this. And there's a huge demand for it, obviously, here living in Florida. We have an aged population. And a lot of the thing that's very frustrating to me is it's not that generally people are going to my competitors. They're just not doing anything. They're just going broke in a nursing home,
right?
And we could stop that. We can save that. We can protect those funds, have them there to supplement your care so that you can have this great level of care for as long as possible. Maybe even leave a legacy to your children, if the money lasts. And yet so many people just don't do it. And so it's kind of my mission to go out there, educate. I do a lot of workshops in the community, just trying to help people understand, hey, this is out there. You can do this. And, you'd be making a mistake if you didn't.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that I see is that not that folks have a misconception about elder care and benefit planning. Mm-hmm. They have no conception.
Right. I think that's a fantastic analysis.
It reminds me of there's a movie with Daniel Day-Lewis, There Will Be Blood. You know, he's this crazy guy, and he believes that, he says, there's a whole ocean of oil under our feet no one can get to except for me. Mm-hmm. I like to just shout that out sometimes randomly. When I'm in Publix, I find that the grocery store, they're like, oh, who is that guy? He must know something I don't know. But in the movie, he's this crazy genius. And he just believes that, it's there and I'm going to get it. And I don't remember exactly how the movie goes because it was extremely boring. But to me, that's what's happening. There's a whole ocean under our feet. There's another story, probably a little bit more apropos, of a guy who travels around the world looking for a special treasure, and he finds out on there that there's acres of diamonds in his own backyard, kind of thing.
Right.
And I feel like so many folks come and they're like, okay, I definitely want to make sure that I have, I avoid probate. Oh, whatever we do, we got to avoid probate. That's all they're concerned about.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot more going on, and VA benefits are huge, but also just a lot. There's a lot, especially when you're interacting with Social Security. But given that, let me kind of take you for a little bit of a tangent. Geoff, you and I met at church. We were the same church, and we've known each other for quite some time. And just recently, I was able to attend a funeral of a church member. And this particular church member had developed dementia, and it came on not just strong, but it came on fast to where he was no longer functional pretty quickly 10 years ago. In the last 8 years, he was not able to work. And in the last 2 years, he didn't know his wife's name.
Right.
And when I look at that type of thing, what do you see as folks out there? Are people aware of what it means and what's going on with Alzheimer's, dementia, and diminished capacity in general? What do you see happening out there?
Probably the best example I have is a gentleman that I talk about in my workshop a lot, because I feel like it's just the textbook example. The gentleman comes in, his name's Gary. He has a appointment on the calendar, and we always put notes. So I look at the notes and it says he wants power of attorney for his wife. Okay, very common. We do those all the time. So comes in, he has his wife with him. I go out there to meet them, and the first couple seconds I realize something's not right with his wife. They're only like probably late 50s, so not old at all, and so I'm trying to talk with her. She can't engage with me. She's singing and dancing, but can't speak, essentially. Wow. And her husband's trying to guide her. Candidly kind of disruptive in our office. And I talked to him, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, I've been taking her to work with me every day, which this guy's boss must be a saint. But, it's to the point now that I can't. She's just too disruptive. I can't focus on what I'm doing, and I need to move her into an assisted living or memory care facility. And they won't take her since I don't have power of attorney, so I need to get power of attorney. And I try to engage with her again. I'm like asking him, Gary, does she ever get any good times? Because that's one thing that you run into a lot with dementia issues is, that it'll kind of be comes and goes. It comes in waves. You hear that term sundowning, where in the evenings people are really bad and don't know what's going on at all. But, maybe in the morning, a little before lunch, they're doing great. And so I'm like, did she have any good times, lucid moments? No, nothing. And I'm like, Gary, it's too late. She doesn't have the right to make, you don't have the right to make decisions for her. Your only options are that she gives you the power of attorney knowingly and intentionally, or you go file a guardianship case in court and go spend, $5,000 to $10,000 in the first couple months between lawyers' fees and filing fees and examining committee fees and just on and on and on. So, he was devastated because he didn't want to have to go through an expensive and lengthy guardianship case. But at that point, there was nothing else that could be done. And, it's frustrating because we try to work with our clients when there's a possibility that someone has capacity to try to get advance directive signed, because I don't want to do a guardianship for you. I want, make it easy for you. We're busy enough that I don't need to try to keep people on the hook and paying us or whatever. I'd rather just, get you taken care of. And in some cases though, you just can't do it.
No, that makes sense. So the guardianship would be the flip side, if you will, the necessary evil of taking care of folks who weren't able to get to you or to someone ahead of time to take care of that power of attorney situation. So
that's right.
Yeah, definitely puts a fine point on it for sure. With that, I'm wondering also too, a lot of folks think to themselves, well, I can see all that can go wrong. What are some of the things that you do in estate planning for folks that you've seen go right, where you're able to say, hey, this was a success story, kind of like a Gary, but in reverse, in the sense that, hey, we were able to take something that they didn't think was possible, and we were able to make their estate planning dreams come true. Granted, they probably passed away.
Sure.
For that to happen, maybe even looking forward, they're not gone yet, but they know that they've got some sort of like, hey, I can sleep at night.
Yeah. So probably where, and this is, I would say the area where it's the most beneficial and the most helpful for these individuals. But when you have a married couple and one of them has had a major health crisis and they're in a skilled nursing facility, we do asset protection for the surviving spouse, and we can protect basically everything for that. I should say surviving spouse. The spouse that's in the community. And we can protect all that for them while getting Medicaid for the spouse that's in the facility. So it's a win-win, right? You know, the spouse in the facility has Medicaid and the spouse in the community has their assets. Wonderful. Where things start getting a little dicey is when the person in the community, if they were to pass away before the spouse in the facility, generally speaking, all those assets are going to go back to that spouse, disqualify them from Medicaid. All the money they spent with us getting qualified now has been wasted. Essentially, we have to do it all again.
I never thought of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we have started doing is there is a way that we're able to use something called a testamentary trust. And that's as in the weeds as I want to go with this.
Understood. Yeah.
It'll put everybody to sleep otherwise. But the bottom line is you can create a special needs trust through your will. And you can actually have it funded by like a revocable trust. And this special needs trust then can receive those funds, use them to supplement the spouse who's in the facility, and then ultimately it protects it from Medicaid clawback or anything like that. And then when that person in the facility passes away, you can leave it to your kids. So it's a really neat way. And we, set these up, and we've had some people predecease their spouse in the facility, and they've had to use this. And it, of course, works every time. So instead of the money they spent with us having been wasted and having to redo the Medicaid planning, their loved one is already qualified. They don't lose their eligibility. Those funds are there to supplement their care. And then ultimately, if that person passes away, they can leave a legacy to the people that they want to leave it to.
It's pretty incredible. I did not know that was a possibility. I get that question a lot, by the way. Folks come to me, where either they're widows and widowers, and they're looking at Medicaid planning on how to be effective. And that's the number one question I get. They tend to have means, and so they feel like, well, I would love to, look at Medicaid planning, but I make too much money, I have too much stuff.
Right.
Is that a bad client possibility for you?
No. So, like I like to tell people, if Bill Gates had the medical need for Medicaid, I could get him qualified.
Wow.
It wouldn't make any sense, right? I mean, the money he would lose in taxes would far outweigh any benefit he would ever get, but I could do it. And the point of that is, if I can do it for him, I can do it for realistically just about anybody else that has that medical need for Medicaid. It boils down to a question of, does it make sense? And so in some cases it doesn't. I've had people come to me with $4 or $5 million, and in those cases, the likelihood of what they will lose through that protection process, or when we do the crisis planning, you generally lose some of it. And just to back up, what crisis planning means is when you have somebody in the facility now going into the facility, it's not too late to do planning.
Okay.
And that's what I mean is, if Bill Gates was there right now, this second in a facility, we could do the Medicaid planning for him, but it wouldn't make sense. And so, generally when you get above about the 1.2, 1.5 range, it stops making sense. It oftentimes doesn't make sense lower than that as well. It just depends on things like age, health condition. Does this person just have dementia, but they easily have another 10 to 12 years?
Right.
Well, at $10,000 a month, some of this planning makes a whole lot of sense. Whereas if you don't do the type of planning, let's use a different example. You have someone who's 95 in really poor health and has $1 million. It'd be a terrible use of money. To lose, let's say 10 to 15% of it to get qualified for Medicaid, but then they pass away 3 months later, which private pay would have been $30,000. So it kind of comes down to a very fact specific sort of conversation in helping them understand, does it make sense or not for you?
Yeah. And I think that's also key too. And I'll say this again before we wrap it up, but don't believe a word that we're saying. We're not offering advice to you specifically, dear listener, because we don't know your particular case. And in each case, it all depends on everybody's wants and desires and how we can manage the situation. So many variables to talk about. So it's definitely worth a phone call and a conversation.
Definitely.
Now, for someone like myself, I'm younger than perhaps somebody who's looking at worrying about Medicaid planning right now.
Sure.
But typically folks in our age bracket, they've got young families, and they've got, I had a quick question that comes to me constantly, and that is, hey, I've got a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, right? I've got a nice size IRA. I'm going to have my beneficiary be my spouse, but my contingent beneficiary probably be my kids. I want to make sure my kids get it.
Yeah.
What's the pros and cons of having your minor child as a contingent beneficiary versus something else?
So as far as cons, there's a couple that really jump to mind, including one that's actually kind of new. The first is that, if you leave it to a minor and you were to pass away, let's say you and your spouse pass away in a car accident or something, it's going to have to go through probate to go to the kids. It's going to be held in it goes through probate, and then it actually gets held in a guardianship account, which is actually a separate court case that has to be opened up to hold those funds until that child reaches a certain age, at which point they can start being distributed out. The other thing that is kind of a big reason not to do that, and there was just a decision that came out of the Supreme Court of the United States here that said that inherited IRAs are no longer considered retirement assets in bankruptcy. So they don't have any asset protection anymore. And as far as, the asset protection attorneys, because we do a lot of asset protection as well, our analysis of that means that asset protection probably is, it's not protected from bankruptcy. It's probably not going to be protected from anything else. So
anything else would be predators and creditors.
Yeah. So if your child is struggling to figure out money and runs up to Amex and gets a lawsuit, they may come after that IRA, where previously that would be protected for your kid. So, there's a couple of reasons that you may not want to just leave them outright. And in fact, we're setting up a lot of IRA standalone trusts these days. They call them standalone IRA trusts. But basically, it's a trust that could be the beneficiary of an IRA, because then you can build in the creditor protection, the bankruptcy protection, all that stuff that we lost with this recent decision from the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, well, it's not fantastic. It's bad, but it goes to show you that thanks to our friends in the Supreme Court and in the government in general, they keep moving it's like playing a football game and the ref says, you know what, it's going to be 200 yards for a touchdown.
Right.
Sorry, we just decided
the rules.
There's 7 downs for you, 3 downs for the other guy.
Right.
Which is how I always feel like if you're not engaged with professionals, then you just don't know what you don't know. Exactly. I think that's probably a theme when it comes to planning, elder care, estate planning is, man, there's just so much out there.
Yeah, and we live in a society where there's so much information available to us via the internet that everyone wants to kind of, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people want to do it themselves. Yeah. And the frustrating thing is, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've learned a lot through this, that if you go spend 2 hours on the internet, you're not going to find. We've run into stuff all the time. Like people come, I'd say we probably run into this situation 20 plus times every single year. But someone coming in saying, hey, I want to add my son's name to the deed because I want him to have to go through probate when I pass. I go, well, you can add him. I want to do a quick claim deed. We'll co-own it together. Great, fantastic. The problem is that child isn't going to get a step up in basis when you pass away. So if they go to sell that property, now they're paying capital gains tax on the difference between what they sell it for and what you paid for it back 40 years ago when you bought it. For $20,000, and now it's worth $300,000. Sure, you might have saved yourself a $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 on probate. But at a 15% capital gains rate, on the appreciation of, let's say it's $200,000, so there's $180,000. 15% is, I don't know, you're the finance guy, but right. It's a lot more than $3,000 or $4,000. Yeah. There are ways you can do both and have it still be more cost effective, but people just don't know what they don't know. Back to your point. Yeah, and we also, unfortunately, we hear too many buzzwords or hey, whatever you do. In our businesses, you'll hear things like buy and hold or buy term, invest the difference. There's just like these buzzwords that are supposed to be true. And in yours, I find when clients come to me like, well, all I want to make sure is I don't get myself in probate. They're just, and I know I've spoken with you and I've gone to some of your workshops where you talk about where probate is good and where probate is bad and how you can manage probate correctly. Absolutely. So I think that's definitely worth a sit down and have a conversation with you. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? They can give us a call at 407-574-8125. But probably what I would recommend most people doing is hopping on our website and just learn more about us. Obviously all of our contact information is there. The website is familyfirstfirm.com. And that's all spelled out, familyfirstfirm.com. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate it. And like I said before, the key is you definitely want to give us a ring and make sure that you get your questions answered, your goals looked at, because everybody's a little bit different. And Geoff, thanks so much for stopping by, man. Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Geoff, thank you so much for coming in today. Ray, thank you for bringing him in. Geoff, before we do sign off, can I ask you a quick question? Yes. Fantastic. So I've had family members go through Alzheimer's, dementia, the whole 9 yards, and it's been absolutely devastating in some of the cases. Some of my family members were set up a little bit better than one of the others, but it really, really affected the family. And I know it's on the rise from what I understand, the studies that I've seen, that type of ailment, if you will. It's happening more and more. It's occurring more often. So if people are listening to this podcast and they are thinking, okay, I really need to get more information. I know you mentioned that you do seminars. How do they sign up for those seminars specifically?
So we have a separate website that you can visit to figure out what upcoming seminars there are, and then you can register there. That is orlandoelderlaw.com, orlandoelderlaw.com. And there it just has our list of upcoming seminars. We do one monthly at a place called One Senior Place in Altamont Springs. And then oftentimes we have other workshops around town at assisted living facilities, independence, those types of places, senior communities, the library. So,
fantastic. Thank you so much for what you do and what you bring to the community. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Hey, Ray, thank you. And I know that you've got a vast network of folks, professionals that you work with, just like Geoff here. How can somebody get a hold of you so they can talk about their finances, talk about some of the things that you brought up today, and get connected with the network that you know and that you work with?
Great question. Yeah. And one of the most important things about wealth planning and wealth management is that you are working on a team of folks that are working in concert together. Mm-hmm. And if you'd like to learn more about that, I've got a couple blogs about it on our website. And also there's contact information and a few videos kind of explaining the process. And the place to find that would be at Privada Wealth, Privada wealth.com.
Fantastic. All right, guys, thank you again for all your work today.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
You bet. And thank you all for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Rey Descalso. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Ray comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. This one specifically is a great one to share because of the content and because you probably know somebody that is affected by some of these issues that the elder community has. And let's face it, there's a lot of companies out there that want to take advantage of them, and we need somebody in their corner to fight for them, and that's what Geoff does. So share this podcast with them, please. Again, thanks for listening. For everyone at Privada Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Hosted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Privada Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider for any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The following program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through J.W. Cole, financial member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Rey Descalso should not be construed as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. All economic and performance information is historical and not indicative of future results. Investing may involve the risk of loss of principal. Any tax advice on this show is not intended to be used by any person for the purpose of avoiding U.S. federal or state tax penalties that may be imposed on such person, and each listener should seek advice from their tax advisor or legal counsel on topics that arise from the show. Rey Descalso is not providing legal or tax advice. Nothing should be construed as solicitation of an offer to buy securities. The preceding program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content.